Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So chapter 1, we are towards the end. We've been discussing the past few weeks how the fall happens, right? That's the two words the Gita starts with. Dharma kshetre, kurukshetre. So you are that field of divinity, Dharma kshetra. That's your real identity. And because of ignorance, we've lost cognizance of that field within. And therefore, we believe ourselves to be this body, mind, intellect. This is the Kurukshetra, the field of battle, strife. So the minute you lose your infinite nature, the mind becomes agitated. So actually, we are nothing but a bundle of mental agitation. That's what we are. The body is just a vehicle to try and fulfill those agitations, fulfill those desires. But you must understand what's happening. The minute you leave the self, the mind starts, that flow of thought starts. So, this is symbolized by the first chapter, Arjuna Vishada Yoga. The yoga of Arjuna, yoga in the sense, the explanation of Arjuna's sorrow. So the battlefield represents the battle of life, the challenges you're going to face, and inevitably you're not prepared, you don't have the knowledge. So you could be a stalwart in your field, you could be highly successful, but you'll be extremely agitated, which is what is happening everywhere. So once the mind becomes agitated, then you can't think clearly. You lose that clarity of vision in life. You don't know what you ought to do and how to do it. And those agitations take a toll on your physical capacity. The body slowly loses its strength, vitality, gets into all kinds of diseases, inaction. You want to get away from action. That's what Arjuna said, I'm not going to fight. So we went through all that. And then another interesting thing happens is when you have these powerful desires, they hold the mind hostage. They hold the intellect hostage. So your intellect starts controlling your thought rather than the other way around. Very interesting. See, when you're spiritual, the intellect is able to think apart from your emotions. So you're very objective in life and you make the right decisions. See, like a judge, a true judge, not the judges of today, needs to be totally impartial to the defendant and the plaintiff. Then they can make the right decision by judging the merits of the case. But the plaintiff is the son-in-law of the judge. That's what's happening nowadays. So you are so involved, you are so caught up in your own personal beliefs. Anybody who goes along with the beliefs, you say that's right. This is not judgment. This is madness. So what has happened is the emotions are there and they take over your intellect. That's what has happened to Arjuna. So now he's so attached to his family, he doesn't want to fight them. So he starts looking for reasons. The mind starts looking. He says, I see adverse omens. My enjoyment will be stained with their blood. All wrong reasons. The correct reason is, you are a warrior. This is what ought to be done. You have to destroy unrighteous elements in society. That's your job. That's your duty. That's your obligation. So what else do you want? But the mind takes over. So I told you, Swamiji has compiled a book called the Select English Poems. Beautiful compilation of English literature. Totally nothing but Vedanta. Because Vedanta is universal knowledge. So in that you will see that there's a poem called The Pond. And in that poem, there's a chick who looks at the ducks that are swimming in the pond, and it really wants to swim. But the mother hen has warned her, no swimming. And mother hen leaves. So the mother hen represents the scriptures, Vedanta, this knowledge which teaches you what life is, but you don't follow it. And then what happens? Your desires take over, right? So it's so obsessed with swimming that it starts reasoning. It thinks it's reasoning, but it's not. My feet, wings and feathers, for aught that I see, as good as the ducks are for swimming, said she. Though my beak is pointed as their beaks are round, is that any reason that I should be drowned? Now, how do you argue with that? My beak is pointed, their beaks are round. Is that any reason that I should be drowned? And you start seeing things which are not there. It's saying, my feet, wings and feathers, for aught that I see, as good as the ducks are for swimming. Have you seen a chick's fingers? They're like this. Have you seen a duck's feet? They're what? Webbed. And it's saying it's the same thing. You're so deluded by your desires. You see exactly what you want to see. This is happening to Arjuna. And the poet gives the clue. For in spite of all that her mother had taught her, I am really remarkably fond of the water. See, that's the clue. So all of you should understand, it's not Arjuna, it's not the chick, this is you. Either you don't have an intellect. Whatever little intellect is there, it's usually usurped, taken over by your mind's desires. And it makes you reason in favor of the desire. So both ways you're finished. And the duck drowned. The chick drowned. So Arjuna starts seeing things. I see omens. I see this. I see that. And then he starts trying to justify it with righteous things. See, I read it out to you, right? 40 to 45. If we don't fight, the religiosity of the family will go. Then the women will get corrupted. Then there'll be intermixture of castes. Then the ancestors will not be given their offering. See, he doesn't know what he's saying. But he's brought in so many concepts. That's why I said I'll explain it today. I didn't have time last time. So, first of all, these rituals that are prescribed, whether it's to the ancestors and rites and all, they're a part of every religion. But it has a purpose. And the purpose of ritual is to remind you of your purpose in life, which is to find the self. So the mind gets so attached and involved to the world that what these masters said is you intercept the day, the week, the month, the year with various rituals, festivals. So you stand apart and think, what is my life really all about? But who uses it like that? Now the festivals, rituals are used as an excuse for indulgence actually. That festival, we cook that. Right? That festival, we eat that. We meet that. There's no concept of what it's for. So there's a ritual for the ancestors. That's what he's talking about. Where you remember the values they left behind and try and implement it in your life. Those days, all the ancestors had high values. Now it's a big question mark. Now my ancestor was a mafia don. Then you don't have to remember that person. You understand? But it has a meaning. So you use it for that. And the caste system, another blessing became a curse. It's still a curse in India. Incredible how deeply ingrained it is. All the Upanishads have spoken against it. The Gita also speaks against the wrong application. That's why in the Gita throughout he says, Swabhavajam, your caste depends on your nature, not on your birth. How absurd. Does an accountant's son have to be an accountant? How can you be on birth? Federer's father played for tennis, is it? Imagine if Federer did what his father did. It would be a disaster. There is no concept of any kind of spirituality in my family. You understand? No concept at all. Forget about we never entered a temple when I was young. Only temples were where the drinks and food were served. You understand? Those were considered the temples. So, what are we talking? That means I should not follow. So it has nothing to do with your birth. It's to do with your swabhava, your nature. So he doesn't know what he's talking. Nobody knows. They lose spirituality, impiety. In fact, the true opposite is true. Krishna supported this war to resurrect piety and righteousness in the society, which had become so corrupt those days under Krishna's nose. So don't complain about corruption. It's there in every age. It's a question of less or more. Now it's overwhelmingly corrupt. That's true. But it's there all the time. So you got to fight. That's the Mahabharata war. So in 45, he comes to his fantastic conclusion. That's what we will read today and complete this chapter. So any questions or clarifications thus far? You all clear, right? I'm just recapturing what we did last time and explaining the actual meaning.
Gautamji, I have a couple of questions.
Yes, related to this, right? Yeah.
Chapter 1.
Chapter 1, okay, that's very...
So, when you are explaining the verse 31, you talked about the 4 levels of growth of intellect. At that time, you mentioned that gross intellect and subtle intellect are 2 different equipments. I used to think, or at least my understanding was, intellect is one equipment, and if you apply it in the world, it's gross. If you apply beyond the world, it's subtle. Can you please clarify when you said there are 2
Right.
separate equipments?
So Akhila's question is, we mentioned intellect is of 2 types, gross and subtle, right? When it's operating in the world, it's called gross. When you conceive the possibility of something beyond the world, it's subtle, right? So we said there are 2 different things. You thought it's one thing, only where it's applied is different. See, both mean the same in the sense, when you have applying the capacity, intellect is the capacity to think and reason. When the thinking is applied within the world, it's gross. And when the thinking questions what is beyond the world, it's still the intellect, because you're questioning, you're examining. That's called subtle. That's the spiritual part of you. Now, when we say there are two different things, is just because a person is applying in the gross world and he's excelling, doesn't mean he's applying subtly. Right? So his subtle intellect is zero. He's not applied it there. So I gave you the example. There could be a scientist. So many times it's happened. People come and say, my friend is this brilliant scientist or a brilliant doctor. He would love hearing Vedanta because you talk so logically, so systematically. I'm bringing him, and I know what's going to happen. And in the class, that fellow, he's gone off to sleep. You understand? You also tried so many. What happened? Only you're awake, not because of you, but the problem is that. So since they have not cared to explore the subtle, they can't relate to it. It's not grown at all. And vice versa also. There are saints who've been illiterates in terms of scholastic knowledge. They don't have. Kabira was a weaver. He not has any formal academic training. He could demolish any so-called spiritual person because his subtle intellect was so powerful. He could clearly see the futility of the world, right? Because they don't care to develop the gross intellect. But with Vedanta, what happens also, I told you, since the subject is so deep, so profound, and you have to apply a tremendous amount of intellect to try and understand it, subtle, that thinking capacity becomes very powerful. So if you apply it in the gross world, you will be super successful. There's no question. Your clarity becomes so much. You may choose not to apply it. If you do. So that's what it is.
Can I ask my second question?
You can ask.
So in the same class, this is the June 30th, not last week.
I don't know which month, which year we are in. You're talking about which class. You tell me what you want to know. This class of this year, of this month, and
in the sense it's related to this chapter. So when you talked about Dharmaraja and talked about sense of value and sense of proportion, it's obvious for sense of proportion you need the intellect, but for the sense of value, so is that end product of just the mind or a combination of mind and the intellect that one develops the sense of the value or the principle?
Sense of values you're asking versus the sense of proportion, which we talked about. Again, very important. Just as gross subtle intellect is important, this is equally important for all of you. So, sense of values truly develops with intellectual growth, right? When you understand what is important in life, the higher values, you develop a commitment to pursue them. This is values. But the mind has a tendency to get attached to anything. So you get obsessed by those values, even though they may be higher. Because the mind gets a kick out of it. I am pursuing the highest things, right? It's more of an egoistic pleasure. So you get so attached to it. And then you stop thinking. So you become what is called as a fanatic. This is fanaticism. When the value could be correct, but you become fanatic about it, then you lose your sense of proportion. So, sense of proportion is using your intellect to understand when to apply exceptions when necessary. So, I give you so many examples. Sense of value is you must get up at 5 a.m. I've told you that should be your value. Anyone who wants to grow spiritually, it has to be done early in the morning. There's no other time. You take it or leave it. So that should be your value. But suppose you have 105 fever and you slept at 2:30 after rolling in the bed and so much pain. 4 o'clock I get up. You collapse right there. You got to understand you are not well. It's not that you don't want to get up, but your body needs rest. This is called sense of proportion. So the mind gets attached. Fanaticism. So you must always be aware not to get attached. So people don't have devotion, most people. And the few people who have devotion and feeling, they're fanatic. They get fanatically attached to the religion or the guru or the whatever they get attached to, ritual. Then it makes no sense at all. They don't grow. So to have that feeling, the right values, and have an intellect, very difficult. Very difficult. Almost an impossible thing. So you got to work on it, right? Wherever you find yourself not thinking, no, why am I doing this? Keep questioning that. What is the purpose behind it? Let me just not get attached. Got it? Brad says something. No.
Yes, Gautamji, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what Arjuna is doing is reasoning, correct? So like if we want to take a decision and do some action, we do think about the impact it has on our family and all that, right? Otherwise, we all would just act like
Go ahead. What's the
randomly,
question?
No, I think I'm just trying to justify what Arjuna is doing because he's trying to do an action and he's evaluating the impact it has on his near and dear. So that's what I think.
He is justifying and you're justifying his justification. This is even a better intellect. Did I say you should not reason? You should not foresee consequences? That's the intellect. But his reasoning is all faulty because he has a desire not to fight because he's attached. He's not able to see his obligation. So anything built on an edifice of fault, it's like building a house on a faulty foundation. It'll crash. So listen to the lectures before today and what I just said and reflect upon it. Because what he's saying is wrong. The consequences are, if you don't fight, those are the consequences, not if you fight. He's exactly saying the wrong thing. So you got to think about the reasoning behind it. Hari?
Yes, Gautamji. Could you clarify the difference between the ethical values and religious value?
Ethical and religious. See, when we talk about religious or spiritual, those values refer to reaching the self, the highest, enlightenment, right?
Yes.
When you refer to ethics and morality, that refers to your obligations to society.
Okay.
So those are different. They're limited. No doubt they're important. But Vedanta goes way beyond that. It goes to the self. And when you have the highest values, the spiritual values, you will automatically become ethical and moral. But an ethical and moral person is not necessarily spiritual. They stop there. They can't see that. But a truly spiritual person is automatically ethical, moral. He'll do all his obligations to his community, family, everything. You get it? So there are two. So maximum in the world you will find people with some sort of ethics and morality. That is for sure. They are principled, they are service minded. But you will hardly find anybody with a subtle intellect who's truly spiritual. So nowadays a saint is considered a person who does service to others. That's the definition. He's a saint, he helps so many people. That is a very limited. True saint is a person who reaches enlightenment. As a byproduct, yes, they will serve others, for sure. But they don't stop there. Nowadays, the selfishness level is so high that even a person who does little unselfish work is considered a spiritual person. No, they are not. In fact, the spiritual institutions who are supposed to be teaching these values themselves can't teach. So they all do social work. Schools and hospitals and this and that. I'm not against it. It's good work. But it's not spiritual work. It's community work. It's non-profit work. It's totally different. What spirituality is. Spirituality includes this. This doesn't include the spirituality. You understand? One of the pillars of spiritual growth is karma yoga, service and sacrifice. You have to have that. You don't stop there.
But will a person who is very ethical and very moral and doing a lot of good things in this world, why is it that they are unable to become spiritual? Why is it that they stop with the world?
Why are there people who are ethical, moral, service minded, but they are not able to relate to spirituality? Because they don't have the capacity. They are complacent in that. They get that egoistic pleasure. I am serving you all. It's a egoistic. You're reveling in that pleasure. A spiritual person will say, even this is a worldly pleasure. There has to be something beyond this. Even this is limited. They can't. You see, it's like asking, why is a materialistic, sensual person not doing service? It's like asking that. They can't go to that level. They are stuck in materiality, sensuality. These people have gone beyond materiality, sensuality into service. But they are stuck there. They are attached. Deadly attachment. Upanishads say that, right? Those who revel in this higher values, vidya, they get in even greater darkness. So, terrific ego. Not that you will see any ego, you won't know. Only a person who's gone beyond them will know. That feeling, this is it. How many people I've helped. I have gone to Africa and given them this. And I'm not saying you should not, but they can't see beyond. Impossible. So you say, yes, great work. Thank you very much. They just can't. See, in this context, there was a prize. I'm not going to say which one because then it's personal. Anyway, it's a huge prize of $1 million or something like that, given to a person. Very interesting. The founder is American. To a person who can explain the mystery of God. So, this was when I had gone to England with Swamiji. When is that? 15 years ago. We were there, I remember. It was London. Because Wimbledon is going on. I had gone to see that. That's why I remember. This is by the way, but what is that? So this prize. So what we were doing, so we used to go every morning. And some of his devotees said, Swamiji, we should apply for that prize on your behalf. Somebody has to apply. So we got somebody who's well known or whatever. And Swamiji was writing why he's been able to explain it. My guru. And the prize that year went to a fellow who doing great social service. Now what does that have to do with God? So next year again we wrote to them. That sponsor, that look, here is a person who's explained clearly what God is. They said, yes, you're very right. We re-entered him for the thing. Next year again the same thing. Some scientist who did some particles or something, they give that. Now, what does that have to do with God? They can't understand. So what you're asking, who's considered spiritual in this world? Nobody can judge. You have to be spiritual. And the spiritual people won't bother talking about it. You go to them and you learn. That's all. That's the maximum you'll get. So they can't. They're complacent in that level. Like a person is complacent with money and family. Which person even thinks of the public service? My money, my family. That's all. Rest of the world can go. So these people at least are thinking, but they are stuck there.
But you would expect after doing years of karma yoga, some spark must come at some time for you to.
Sometime it will come in every human being. Spark will come. Could come in a criminal also. It can come in anyone. But they are right now stuck in that. When the spark will come could be 3 lives later. How do you know when it will come? Yes, since you overcome the selfish level, you've gone to the unselfish. You are definitely well placed to go to selfless. From selfish to go directly to selfless is difficult. There are 3 levels, right? One is selfish, then you move to unselfish, then selfless. Selfless is self-realization, enlightenment. So they are definitely in a better place. Person who is detached, relatively unselfish. But when, who knows? They could be caught in that emotion for lives, literally. It's not a joke. Just as you've been caught up in money and family and your ego for lives. Now, when you want to get out of it, that's your internal commitment. When it comes and when you choose to pursue it. Alright? So you don't, first of all, don't worry about them. You worry about where you're caught up. Enough samsara all over the place. Samsara maya. Immersed in samsara. "45. Question by who? Yes, sir.
Just a quick question. The way Arjuna is doing his reasoning, like for us as well, we are, every time when we have to do something, whether to do it or not to do it, we always have that choice of action, and we come up with our own reasoning as well. But how do we, figure out whether it's like reasoning based on the mind, or emotions of the mind, or is it really based on logic and reasoning?
How do you know where your reasoning is based on your intellect or mind? You will not know.
That's right.
Period. Because the thing which enables you to reason is your intellect. And if there's a strong desire holding your intellect hostage, how will you know? The intellect will reason in favor of the mind. So the only chance is before the action, before you get into that desire, your intellect functions. And if you're smart, if it is an important decision, you will choose to ask somebody who's objective, who's not caught up in your desires. Right? It's like, how can you know how to operate in medicine? You have a problem, you don't use your intellect. You go to a doctor who has a better intellect in that area. So similarly, you will not know. So make sure you don't get into a situation where your desire and attachment is so strong. Then in those areas, don't reason. Take guidance from somebody who's not caught up. Otherwise, you're in danger. That's exactly what that poem is saying. The mother hen has warned her. You don't take the warning. You have your own desires, just pay the price. So if you're humble, where am I going wrong? And you have access to guidance, which itself is not easy to find. You make sure you have that. Especially in areas where it's a very important decision. 45.
कर्तुं व्यवसिता वयम्
यद्राज्यसुखलोभेन हन्तुं स्वजनमुद्यताः अहोबतमहत्पापम् कर्तुं व्यवसिता वयम् यद्राज्यसुखलोभेन हन्तुं स्वजनमुद्यताः.
Alas, we are involved indeed to commit a great sin by preparing to slay our own kinsmen for the greed of pleasure of kingdom. So he's come to his own conclusion here. The war was not fought for greed or pleasure of kingdom. Now, why is he bringing that in? It was fought for righteousness. These people had become a curse on the society, which is why Krishna supported the war. We are involved to commit a great sin. In fact, if you look at the Mahabharata, it is Arjuna who convinced Yudhishthira, who didn't want to fight, and gave him the reasons, the correct reasons at that time. And now he's so caught up in emotion, he doesn't know what he's talking. So, like I was just telling Pandurang, when you are in an area where you're weak, where you know you're attached, do not reason in that area. Protect yourself. Make sure you consult. Or you reason at a time when you're not caught up in that emotion. It's like when you're angry with somebody and you're reasoning. How is it possible? So when that emotion cools down, then you think. So even temporarily, if you know you're getting caught up in an emotion, do not operate on that. Confucius said that the cautious never err. The cautious never make mistakes. So always err on the side of caution. When you know you have a weakness, when you know you're attached, when you know you're dependent, do not operate your intellect in those areas. So this is objectivity. Learn to be a little objective. Don't react. Learn to tell people, let me get back to you. Let me give it a thought. Yes, no, immediate, so impulsive. You just go on talking whatever you want to talk. So he doesn't know what he's saying. And 46, he goes one step further. People who he hates, he's saying, if they kill me also, it's okay. This is typical Rajasic renunciation. You don't want to fight. If they take away everything, let them take. You know, you don't want to put that hard work in it.
यदि मामप्रतीकारम् अशस्त्रं शस्त्रपाणयः धातराष्ट्रारणे हन्युः तन्मे क्षेमतरं भवेत् यदि मामप्रतीकारम् अशस्त्रं शस्त्रपाणयः धातराष्ट्रारणे हन्युः तन्मे क्षेमतरं भवेत्.
If the sons of Dhritarashtra, armed with weapons, should slay me unarmed, unresisting in battle, that would be better for me. See, I told you earlier, this is a typical example of Samshan Vairagya, funeral renunciation. Means at a funeral you feel like renouncing everything. Because you've lost someone near and dear to you, you feel life is not worth living. It's not true. You're so overcome by emotion, you don't know what you're talking. Your true nature is suppressed under that emotion at that time. So Arjuna is saying, whole 13 years he was in the forest. Those of you who know the story of Mahabharata, He was itching to get to this fight. I'm going to finish them off. Let me get an opportunity. In fact, Yudhishthira, his older brother, had to restrain him and Bhima, his other brother. Because they, many times during the forest, they said, we're just going to go and finish them off. They were so strong, they could do it. He said, no. We've given a commitment of 13 years and that's what's going to happen. So a person who is nursed a lifelong grudge against, hatred, is waiting to fight. They kill me also, it's okay. How is it possible? So, any person who's dealing with such a person, now learn from Lord Krishna. 46 verses we've had to painfully listen ourselves. We also want to painfully renounce this chapter. Thank God, only one more verse left. Because the knowledge has not yet started. But we are learning what happens when you don't have knowledge, which is important. Because you're learning about yourself in this chapter. So at least you should know what you are, no? Before you know what you want to be. Correct? So, what did Krishna do? So when a person is emotional and they are letting out, just let them let off. Let them exhaust. Because how long will they go on talking? Even the most talkative person will get tired sometime. No? Right? Although it seems some people it doesn't happen, but they go on blabbering and you're waiting. So Krishna kept quiet. Because Arjuna has not asked him anything. He's emotional and he's giving his own reasons which he thinks is correct. What's the point of talking? Please learn that with your spouse especially. They've not asked you anything. They go on talking and they don't want to listen to you. Now why do you talk in them? If one of you keeps quiet, at least that they'll thank me for. See, ever since my spouse has started learning Vedanta, one thing I must, they told me, two things. One is they don't talk that much back to me. And second is they don't shop that much. You understand? So they thank me for that. So I can't say a percentage of those savings, at least pass it on, But they, actually they've told me, so bills have gone down and the house is also more quiet. I say, what else you want? Just that objectivity. Keep quiet. And you see it works miracles. Because then the person automatically becomes introvert. You'll see that in the second chapter. See, we're not just joking, it's serious. If your person is talking and the other person is not reacting, what will the person do? I'm going on provoking, they're not saying anything. Maybe there's something wrong with what I'm saying. There's at least an opportunity to go introvert. And that's what you'll see in chapter 2. Arjuna finally collapses and says, I don't know what I'm talking. I don't know if I should fight or not fight. Now you tell me. That's when he starts. It's amazing how it works. So it's all psychology. Very important for life. So 47, Sanjaya says, Arjuna casts away his bow and arrow and says, that's it, I'm done.
Sanjaya uvacha eva bhuktvārjuna sankhe rathopastha upavishat visrujya sasharam chapam shoka samvigna manasaha. Sanjaya uvacha eva bhuktvārjuna sankhe rathopastha upavishat visrujya sasharam chapam shoka samvigna manasaha.
Sanjaya said, Having spoken thus in the battlefield, Arjuna sat down in the seat of the chariot, casting away his bow and arrow, with mind distressed with sorrow. So, now why he stops the chapter here is this is the summary of life. When you look at life from a personal angle, from the standpoint of you, me, mine, your mind becomes agitated. That's what he says. Arjuna, mind distressed with sorrow, he sat down, casting away his bow and arrow. And you lose your capacity to act. And you may say, I'm still acting, but what is the quality of your action? Do you look forward to Monday mornings or Friday evenings? As simple as that. Your concept of enjoyment in life is to get away from your work. Right from the presidents to the labor, it's the same story everywhere. Vacation. 30 years it's been, I have not taken a vacation. My guru has been 65 years, 70 years, he's not taken a vacation. What vacation? Every day is vacation. If you know how to function. So if you don't know how to function, you're tired. You're agitated. So you need to get away from that to feel happy. Cast away his bow and arrow and sat down. See, these fellows all think they are top, in tennis is going on now. Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, those of you who follow, 3 of the best players in history. But the guy who had more slams than any of them at the age was Borg. Bjorn Borg. At 27, when he retired, he had more slams than any of these guys. But he couldn't carry on. Tragedy. He would have had many more than these. He was so dominant. He said, I'm so much pressure, I can't carry. Then that Justine Henin, one of the women's greats, she also retired at 27. Ash Barty, who was the recent number 1, world number 1, she won Wimbledon, retired, 23, 24 or something. She can't handle it. Just can't handle that pressure of going there and having to win every. Now, who asked you to win every time? Go play your game, man. So that pressure is what we're talking about. Why do you have that pressure? Selfishness. I have to win. I have to be number 1. Why? I have a beautiful talent. Let me go express it. Who cares you win or lose? They would have been playing till 40, trust me. So that tiredness. And it's encouraged. Who was telling me, my son, his goal in life is 40, he wants to retire. He's 17. They go to college with that attitude. I'm going to this thing, I'll go to Wall Street, I'll make million, and then at 40 I'll retire. First show him which fellows retired at 40, how many millions they have. Then a billion. That they can't understand. They start life with that attitude. How fast can we retire? And the prayer in the Upanishads is Chatam Gum Samaha Kurvanne Veha Karmani Chatam Gum Samaha. May we live 100 years doing karma, never stopping. Means doing selfless work till you hit enlightenment. Never stop. There's no concept of retirement. So where is that? Where's the world? Retirement. Retirement was another obsession. Retire. Because you're tired, you retire. If you don't tire, how can you retire? Retire itself means you're tired again. Retire. Correct word. So you must say, I'm not tired, why should I retire? Crazy. So don't worry. You're in that condition now, and now we get chapters 2 through 18, where he gives the knowledge to stop the retirement. So in the end of the 18th chapter, Arjuna says, now my delusion is gone and I know what has to be done. So as is our tradition, those of you who are new, who started from chapter 1, we always chant the first verse, the ending invocation. Every chapter has an ending invocation. That's the tradition. Followed by the first verse to remind us that we have not ended the study. You must have that humility. To the end of the chapter, you say, now I know this chapter. No. I've just gone through it once. I don't understand it. So you have the humility to say, I'm not ending the study, I'm just beginning. So we chant the ending invocation and then the first verse.
Om Tat Sat. Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Arjuna Vishaka Yogo Nama Prathamo Dhyayah Dhritarashtra Uvacha Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre Samavetaayuyutsavaha Mamaka Pandavasheva Kimakurvata Sanjaya.
So just to translate for you the ending invocation, because I know many of you are new. It's the same, only the chapter name changes at the end of every chapter. So it's there in the commentary. You should get the commentary if you don't have it. Om Tat Sat. Om represents the Atman, the self. That is the truth, the reality. This world is an illusion. That's what it means. Thus, in the Upanishads of the glorious Bhagavad Gita, the science of the eternal, which is Brahma Vidya, Yoga Shastra, the scripture of yoga. Yoga means to unite with the self. How to do it? The dialogue between Sri Krishna, the enlightened soul, and Arjuna, the student, ends the first chapter, titled The Yoga of Arjuna's Despondency. So, next week, next Sunday is the Guru Purnima, actual day of Guru Purnima. Happens to be on a Sunday. So, before we start the second chapter, since I won't be talking next Sunday, because we'll all be listening to Swamiji's lecture. You all got the email, like fate versus free will. So, that starts at 9:30 a.m., not 10 a.m. 9:30 a.m. US, 7 p.m. India. Some of you I know log in from there. So it will be streamed that time, and to watch it, all you have to do is go to our website homepage, vedantausa.org. The stream will be there. So you don't have to register or anything. So before we end, since we won't be talking that day, just a few words on Guru Purnima. So Guru Purnima is a day in the year where you pay homage to the preceptor disciple lineage. It's called Guru Shishya Parampara in Sanskrit. It is incredible that from the Vedic age, which was at least 4,000 to 5,000 years ago, there has been an unbroken tradition that this knowledge has been able to be passed down from generation to generation. And it is all because of these great masters and saints who put in the effort to gain it from their teachers. It's not a one teacher. You go to any book, they'll say we learnt it from our teacher. So it's from time immemorial. So the person who has taught you and the person who has taught them and them, it goes on. So it's not one person or individual, it's a tradition. So it's one time in the year you think of that. Be grateful for that. And more importantly is you commit to yourself to carry on the tradition, that I must learn this knowledge. I must do what I can to help the world gain this knowledge. That's all it is. So it's a year. So obviously we will listen to our guru, who, if you think I am your teacher, he's taught me. So we learn from him and he will be giving this lecture, right? So with that spirit, all of you should think about that on that day, listen to the lecture, and of course, if you have any questions, we can take it up the following Sunday. So we'll have the Q&A and the Saturday session as usual. Saturdays I do the attachment session, and on next Sunday we won't have our regular session. You will all listen to the Guru Purnima lecture, and we will meet 2 weeks from today for the Gita, for the beginning of chapter 2, which will be on the 28th, right? 28th of July. Okay. So any other questions and all, we'll take it up next time, and we'll see you on Wednesday. Hari Om.